Hello and welcome to another edition of Jackman Radio. I am your host, Mike Jackman, and I'm very excited to welcome our friend, Robbie Martin, who is the host of Media Roots and the director, producer, and writer and creator of the fantastic expose and documentary on the neocons called A Very Heavy Agenda. He's done some amazing work on the whole anthrax attacks from 2001, the Iraq War, and more recently, he has a fantastic two-part series about the whole Q phenomena. So we're going to get right into it. How you doing today, Robbie?
I'm doing great.
Good. Thanks for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me. I've been followers of you guys for a long time, and yeah, it was great. It was great having one of the Jackman brothers on for my Phantasm Halloween special episode. So we're gonna figure out a way to bring both you guys on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that was a blast, man. I had so much fun doing. I actually re-listened to that recently, and I had a blast doing that. And
yeah, I did too. I found myself drifting off to your Phantasm episode that you guys did, and then I re-listened to part one of your Q one, and then I actually listened to the Israeli ecstasy ring expose you did.
Nice.
Which, like, dude, fucking hats off to you, dude. You must have spent. How much time did you spend researching that, man? You had to have spent fucking, I don't know, hours and hours.
Yeah, I mean, that one was a weird one because I started the research on it like in 2015 maybe. So it was sort of like a project I kept switching on and off in the background. So it took me actually many years to complete. I did it piecemeal, in little bursts. So that interview that's in there, that was actually what got me interested in the whole subject, because I was like, oh, this guy is like someone from like the drug scene, which is someone's already familiar with, like long before getting into conspiracies, was this guy who ran dancesafe.org, which was like one of the most reputable organizations for like ecstasy advocacy and safety. I mean, specifically like how to use it safely.
Right.
That was really fascinating to me. I was like, wow, this guy, the top of this whole sort of like, ecstasy advocacy safety group, like encountered these Israeli art students. That's all the proof I need that this is like a really crazy real thing. So that's
right. Right. And there is some separation or maybe crossover between the ring that were arrested leading up to 9/11, and then all the Israelis that shipped out after 9/11, and then of course the infamous dancing Israeli cell of Urban Moving Systems and Dominic Suter and all those goofballs, which we could talk about tonight or another time. But yeah, those are some hard hitting stuff. So yeah, people, if you haven't check out Robbie Martin's research on that, and it's a good listen.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I didn't fully explore the whole urban moving systems aspect of it. I know other people have really gone deep into that. But as it's like it's almost like a third rail subject within the third rail, kind of. So it's
right.
So approach anything having to do with Israel and that whole thing is very, very delicate. So that's kind of why actually part of why it took so long to put that podcast out, because I was like, I could make this all about 9/11, but I just don't know enough. And, there's other things will probably look into in that regard in the future. But I feel like in A Very Heavy Agenda, I pulled out some pieces that sort of plug into that matrix a little bit. So there's different, pieces already there that I might put together in another form in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Whitney Webb from Mint Press News has done incredible work about urban moving systems and digging into the Mossad links to 9/11. These guys were trailing some of the hijackers, and in one instance helped one of them move. They were down in Hollywood, Florida. So it's a whole big, strain you can pull in the 9/11 narrative. And my brother and I actually have a lot of family who were from New York City, and some of them were former FDNY, a couple of them who were there on 9/11, and we were talking to a couple of our cousins the other night, and they wanted to know what we knew about 9/11, and I said, well, for starters, take a look at urban moving systems and these guys, and look at what Whitney Webb has dug up about them, and start there, because it's going to paint a whole different picture of what we know about 9/11 and how we understand that event.
Yeah, man. I mean, I was having a discussion with someone yesterday, just like how many different currents and shifts happen within the 9/11 truth community, and how just even putting together a timeline of all those different trends and little inner, micro movements within the movement would be really fascinating, I think, study to do. Because it's like, people just don't. I've realized after doing this QAnon episode that people, of course, mainstream journalists are guilty of this, but most people I don't think have a grasp on, exactly where Alex Jones came from, like how he plugged into the 9/11 movement kind of as a grifter in that movement. Like it wasn't his movement. And, how even the Ron Paul movement was sort of associated with him and 9/11. I don't think a lot of people understand how all that fits together. And you guys, you understand all that. So like, I feel really comfortable talking to, both you guys about all this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, they definitely intersected. And yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about Alex Jones on the beginning of the Phantasm episode on Media Roots last October. But yeah, I mean, you look at the world that he came from down there in Texas, and a lot of the end times broadcasts he was doing, and now it just seems like all these years later he's hit his stride with it, and he's built up that audience, and a lot of Americans are, for whatever reason, hungry for it. And that really kind of leapfrogs into the whole Q thing, because I was talking to one of my buddies today, and I said, yeah, we're doing an episode with Robbie Martin, this great researcher on Q. And he's like, man, I don't really know what the whole Q thing is, or what it's even all about, or I haven't really looked into it. So Robbie, what would you tell people who are maybe not as familiar with what the whole Q deal is all about in your view?
Well, so I just don't sound like a broken record. I'll start by saying the purpose. Well, let's see. Give me 1 second. I'm just trying to shift all these thoughts. Okay, so I would say QAnon. What makes it different from other conspiracy theory movements from the past is that QAnon actually believes that the president of the United States is the hero, the white hat, sort of the good guy in the conspiracy. And that's one thing that makes it vastly different from previous conspiracies, because most conspiracy theories, except for maybe the JFK assassination conspiracies, do not paint the current sitting U.S. government administration as heroic. So that's just one thing that makes it vastly different. But in general, breaking down what the QAnon conspiracy is, it is an extension of Pizzagate. It appeared online about a year after the 2016 election. And essentially what it does is it is saying that Donald Trump is in some kind of shadow war secret battle that's happening behind the scenes, not only to fight the deep state, because that's part of it, but also to fight a secret network of elite globalist pedophiles who practice Satanism and also cannibalize children by eating their brain and getting high off the adrenochrome in their brain. And that most of these people are Trump's opponents. So what you'll find in the QAnon conspiracy is that almost no one who Trump likes is painted as an enemy or one of these pedophiles in the larger QAnon narrative. And this wouldn't exist at all if it wasn't for the momentum and the energy that was created with Pizzagate, which one could argue was sort of the October surprise of the 2016 election. It wasn't necessarily even the leaks. It was what the leaks turned into, which was the Pizzagate narrative that took everything so over the top that my theory partially is that people were so excited, so revved up, so energized by this information that Hillary Clinton and all these Democrats were running a secret child sex trafficking ring, that they didn't know where to go with that energy even after Trump won. You would think maybe it would be enough. Okay, Trump won, whatever, let's forget about this conspiracy. But I think what it turned into was people were like, Trump won, now he's going to have to take down this pedophile network. He's going to arrest Hillary now, like obviously. So QAnon sort of operates as a way to keep people's hopes alive that somehow in some way Trump, at the end of all this, which is going to be the storm, QAnon supporters call it, that Hillary Clinton, Podesta, Anthony Weiner, everybody that's associated with high-level Obama administration is going to go down in some kind of deep state. Trump's going to take down these people by arresting them or indicting them. And even some QAnon supporters believe that many of these people are already secretly arrested wearing ankle bracelets, and that some of them are actually in Gitmo. And it's extended beyond politicians now to the point where it's now just like any, pick a random top, a multimillionaire celebrity out of a hat. Chances are the QAnon conspiracy in some way has already accused that person of being a pedophile. unless they happen to be a Trump supporter. So Ellen, Tom Hanks, any celebrity that's like a generic lib, Democrat, is now in danger of being labeled as an enemy by a QAnon. I mean, that's how widespread it's become.
And it's just kind of, a lot of it's taken on a life of its own with the tentacles and the stuff out there about JFK Jr. being alive and like you said, secret tribunals and these people sent down to Guantanamo Bay. I was reading the other day, there's a faction of Q supporters that think that John McCain was sent to Gitmo, and that's really how he died.
Yeah, that's a new one. I like that one. Did you hear the one about Trump getting access to secret Nikola Tesla technology that allows like an actual Palantir to see into the future, like from Lord of the Rings?
Oh yeah, that's a big one because Trump's uncle was like an MIT professor or something, and he had access to all Tesla's files. And now Trump has him. And Barron is a time traveler by way of Back to the Future in the DeLorean with Melania. Okay, he got in the DeLorean, Robbie, and he came back with Tesla's files, and they're great, great files. Believe me.
The first stop that they made was at the 2016 convention when they went back and they got Michelle Obama's speech. Okay, and then they brought it back to the future, and Melania gave the speech better than Michelle, quite frankly.
She did, and Michelle Obama's a man, by the way, too, Robbie. Didn't know if you knew that or not.
Oh, I've seen the pictures of all the bulges. Actually, the what's her face? What's the comedian that died?
Joan Rivers. Yeah.
QAnon people have actually incorporated Joan Rivers off-the-cuff TMZ statement.
Incredible.
Where they have and I think it's actually they've taken that at face value. Like she confirmed. And
then she was killed a week later. It couldn't just be that she had a lot of plastic surgery and she was, I think, in her 80s, But yeah, she was like, everybody knows we've already had the first gay president with Obama and we've had the first tranny first lady with Michelle. That was her comment. She's just like walking into some building somewhere and then it's like, trust the plan,
Yeah.
It's funny to me though is one of the things I've noticed about all this is for some reason Obama doesn't get labeled as being one of these elite pedos very often. And I find that a little bit curious because he's actually one of the only politicians photographed on the James Alefantis Instagram page. He's the only politician in that Instagram photo spread playing ping pong in Comet Ping Pong.
Well, I think the ping pong table was actually at the White House when Alefantis visited the White House.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, even still, I find it a little bit curious. And part of me has wondered how deep this Obama-Clinton family feud has gone. And I wondered at times, is Obama just kind of being like, yeah, you kind of did it to yourself kind of thing. Like, I kind of wonder sometimes how Obama feels about Pizzagate. Like, if it just it's kind of coming home to roost. Like, you guys ran all these dirty tricks. David Brock used to be like a Republican operative before he became a Clinton guy. So
he hated the Clintons. Yeah, he used to write all kinds of nasty stuff about them and do Oppo research. And then of course, he went on to do Media Matters, and he at one point was dating James Alefantis. And the thing about, you mentioned the Instagram, like it's you're a family restaurant. Okay, you advertise yourself as a family restaurant, all ages. The shows with bands on the weekends, and one of the bands is called Sex Stains, and the flyer is it's beyond innuendo, and it's an all ages show. So stuff like that is weird. I think he's creepy, but it's unfortunate that the whole thing got spun. That most people believe that there was a basement in Comet Ping Pong, and that there were actually children being trafficked through the basement, which was Fantasyland. I mean, that was totally Fantasyland. But, luckily some dogged researchers they were able to get Alefantis' Instagram photos and before he made his account private. Sure. And it's just really like a lot of it's really creepy, inappropriate stuff that if you're like a local business owner that's advertising a family-friendly pizza joint, for kids and people of all ages, like why would you publicly be posting stuff like that? And furthermore, it's really, for me, it's the people who are connected to it and who would like the photos and then comment on them. Like Titus Frost has done some really great deep dives into the Instagram connections for Alefantis. I don't know if you've ever looked at any of his stuff. It's not perfect, but it's interesting.
I would like to. I mean, that's what's so fascinating to me about this, because as you said, that is a highly inappropriate Instagram page, and it makes total sense why people would look at that and be like, wow, this is really creepy. The part that really kind of irks me is that there is obviously something weird in there. Like, and the Clinton Foundation and the money laundering and some of the foreign connections to money laundering and just that in general seemed to be the prevailing narrative about those leaks until Pizzagate hit. So part of me wonders, what was there that was criminal that people have just totally ignored now because of Pizzagate? Because that's one of the big things that irks me here is that even though, yes, his Instagram page is creepy as hell, even though, yes, Hillary Clinton and Biden had a role in murdering children all the time in the Middle East. Like, these are amoral people. But to say that you can leap from there to saying that is proof that they're running a child molestation ring, I think is where all these people lost the plot. And I think it's also just fascinating too, because most conspiracy theories throughout time, even Roswell, I mean, even a lot of UFO ones, like even Travis Walton, 7 people witnessed his mysterious abduction. This has no eyewitness accounts of molestation. This has no victims that have come forward. There is, at this moment, no proof of an actual crime having to do with child molestation with any of the people, unless you want to make a stretch and say Anthony Weiner, sexting the 15-year-old, what counts as that? I don't think that's in the same territory, but that's as close as it gets. And that's why I think that one point I mentioned on the podcast is so important, that Eric Prince was trying to create all this connective tissue to make it seem like Anthony Weiner's sexting scandal was directly opening the door to some kind of proof of this child sex trafficking ring that involved Huma and Hillary. And that's obviously not true. He's actually even the one who said that Hillary went to Epstein Island and is on the flight logs too. I'm willing to believe that, but that came from him. That hasn't been proven yet. That all came from him directly.
That came from Weiner?
No, from Eric Prince.
Eric Prince. Yeah, I mean, you got guys like Eric Prince and Dan Bongino saying we have this. We know a guy who is a witness to one of the flights, to Bill Clinton disappearing with an underage girl in a room and then appearing later on. But he's never named the source. And then that was going to be my next point, man. The whole Epstein thing. I mean, we have Ghislaine Maxwell in prison, who's arguably by a lot of researchers was even more prominent and more in charge of the whole thing than Epstein was. And I think that's significant.
Robert Maxwell's daughter. I mean,
an Israeli spy's daughter. I mean, he was in the Mossad from the early 50s all the way up until he was mysteriously killed, or died, or had a heart attack, or hit his head off the bow of the Lady Ghislaine. I don't know.
Well, Christopher Walken and Robert Wagner were seen on a dinghy leaving his boat.
True. Yeah.
Robbie, we got the documents. Folks, I got footage of this from an aerial drone from a UFO that they found at Roswell, and I showed it to Joe Rogan the other night. He freaked out. The elk meat fell out of his mouth. His mouth hit the floor. He couldn't believe it. Infowars.com.
But I think it really does warrant a lot further investigation, and I agree with what you said. To make those leaps, it's not wise to do that, because you really poison the well when you're coming out with that information and you make a claim like that, and there is nothing. I mean, like Ben Swan said in his Pizzagate video that he did, he's like, to date, there's no actual credible information or evidence of pedophilia, but I mean, everything that's going on there, man, with there's smoke, there's fire.
He showed all that smoke. Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts, Robbie, on the boy lover symbol turning up in the sex stains video? Have you seen that?
No, I haven't. The stuff in the Ben Swan stuff, I haven't really looked into. In regards to the bands, because here's where I'm coming from on that. I come from the music scene where a lot of people in the music scene dabble in very edgy, weird, sadistic, sometimes perverted imagery. And I don't know if I could really comment on that, because I'm biased in the sense that I don't really glean much meaning off of like bands dabbling in edgy imagery unless there's something more to it than that. So like, I guess that's all I really have to say on it, because I don't know. I don't know the details, honestly.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, so that the Sex Stains is a band that played there, and their music video has on like a square, it has the boy lover symbol clearly, and then the FBI declassified what that symbol looks like. What's that?
Spiral pyramid with the blue.
Exactly. Yep, it has that on that, and then Best of Pizza's logo, which was next door, connected to Elefantis. Their logo had that swirl, sure. And then you start seeing it pop up now that you're aware of what that swirl is. The show or the movie The Mighty Ducks one of the kids has it on his helmet. It's in the first season of True Detective. On the back of that girl did you watch True Detective?
Yeah.
So on the back of the girl who they have the antlers and she's tied to that tree, the swirl is on her back. So.
Well, that's one interesting thing too, because who was the one who pulled up that FBI document around the same time as Pizzagate? Because I know that
wasn't that WikiLeaks.
I don't think it was. I don't think WikiLeaks was the person who originally pulled it up. So I'm wondering, how is that symbol? Because I mean, yeah, I had never seen that symbol before,
right.
And that's another thing I try to avoid doing in the conspiracy scene in general, is because the Gmail logo, now that I've been researching Masons again, let me just go here for a second. Everything looks like a Masonic logo. I mean, on a certain level. I mean, look at the Gmail logo. It's a straight up Masonic apron. It's like, oh wow, is this Masonic? I don't know. But I mean, I look everywhere now and I'm like, damn, that thing looks exactly like a compass and a protractor. So again, I don't know if I could comment on that specifically. And I just tend to be avoidant of symbology stuff, because I feel like, it could be misconstrued sometimes. But sure, I mean, there are some weird, the Best of Pizza thing is actually probably one of the weirdest things about that, is it's not even Comet Pizza. Like you just said, it's the next door pizza place.
Right.
Had that spiral logo. And that's odd. And that, I would like someone to figure out what the hell that was about. I mean, that is.
They changed it. The owner then changed it.
Yeah, the owner changed it.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, they were getting a lot of hate and a lot of threatening phone calls, which I don't agree with. Obviously, it should have been investigated by the authorities, and supposedly it was. But I mean, there's a bunch of stuff with Pizzagate and different threads and different avenues that a lot of researchers went down. And obviously, Elefantis is up to something, because you don't get named one of the top 50 most powerful people in DC, and you're just a pizza business owner. There's something more going on. So what that is, I don't want to speculate, but it is interesting.
And the coded language of the actual emails itself, you left a handkerchief, it seems pizza related, a pizza related map and a handkerchief. It's like, well, what the fuck is that?
Yes, the handkerchief thing. I actually thought the weirdest thing that, to me, the one that stands out to me the most is the email about the hot dog stand in Hawaii. For some reason, that one is weird enough to me, where I'm like, how could they be literally talking about an actual hot dog stand in Hawaii?
Yeah, that one was strange. Yeah, dreaming of your hot dog stand in Hawaii. I mean, one of the emails talks about Denny Hastert and the hot water that he got in, because he was friends with the Podesta brothers for decades, and they used to go on trips out to Japan. And but do you think, like Jason Burma says, do you think Denny Hastert stopped molesting children the more powerful he got when he rose to become Speaker of the House? And the Podestas are like, oh, he's gonna need to flee to another country. They weren't talking about that. It's horrible that he was outed as a pedophile. They were saying, oh, it's horrible for him that he got caught, basically. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's interesting. There's other researchers out there who've done a lot more detailed work into it, but I still think there was something there. But like you said, it hasn't been proven, right?
Well, so another part of the problem, I think that even if there is, let's say there is in theory some kind of actual child sex trafficking ring somewhere in DC involving high-level politicians, the fact that sort of these Trump plants and surrogates like Roger Stone, Mike Cernovich, and all these shady characters that appear to just be appendages of Trump's own team involve themselves to the degree that they had in Pizzagate, from the very beginning, I think it kind of really poisoned the well of it. So even if there is something there, it makes it really, really difficult to actually find whatever's in there now as a result.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can. I don't know if you've ever looked at the Franklin scandal, but you can go back, and there was, in fact, a ring that was being run through Washington D.C. And it originated in Omaha, Nebraska, with Larry King and the Franklin Credit Union that he was involved in. And he was it's interesting because it's both parties. Republicans want to just say it's just Democrats, and Democrats just want to say, oh, it's Republicans. But Larry King was a fellow who sang the national anthem at the Republican National Convention in the 80s, and he was basically kidnapping these children from Boys Town, which was a school in Nebraska, and they were according to the victims. And there's court documents and interviews. There's 2 great books on it. There's that documentary Conspiracy of Silence, which was supposed to air on the Discovery Channel and got yanked just before. That said they were trafficked to Washington, D.C., and one of the victims, his name is Paul Bonacci, and he actually went to the row house in D.C. and pointed out where it was and talked about all these high-level politicians who were, coming and going, late-night trips to the White House when I believe Reagan or Bush was president. And the guy who was kind of the D.C. arm of that was a guy named Craig Spence, who was very close to Bush Sr., and he ended up, dead in a hotel sometime after that, after a lot of this information came out. So, I mean, that one is a true documented case of that happening, but, the waters definitely get muddy over time.
Yeah, it's too bad that that's the problem, is the waters have gotten so muddy at this point. And that's part of what QAnon has done, is it's sort of muddied the waters of not just this idea of that they're elite pedophile rings, but it's muddied the waters of debates about the deep state. It's muddied the waters of almost every aspect of the conspiracy movement now.
Yeah.
Pretty wild, because both you guys know, whether you agree with it or not, Alex Jones had an incredible influence over the conspiracy movement. He sort of steered it for a while. He was like the captain of the ship. Now it's QAnon, and QAnon has, even if you don't think Alex Jones did damage, QAnon has so much influence now that it's basically eclipsed Alex Jones, and it's now taking over that role of steering the conspiracy movement in whatever direction it wants to.
Absolutely. No, I agree 100%. I mean, Alex Jones was huge in getting people to look at whether it was 9/11 or, Waco or Oklahoma City, or, events that happened in the 90s or the early aughts and whatnot. And Q's like taking on a life of its own, man. And it's hard to keep up on everything that morphs out of it. 'Cause it's like, well, is this actually part of the official conspiracy theory for it, or is this something that someone peppered into it who's not even pretending to be Q? It's like, it's mind-boggling. It's really it's really just kind of like a make-believe choose your own adventure LARP in a lot of ways. And I think people really want to believe it. They want to believe that there's just this group that can be opposed and they can be taken out swiftly, when in reality the world's a lot more complicated than that. And there's just as many pictures. There's more pictures of Trump with Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell than there are of the Clintons. That's, not to say that there aren't photos of them with the Clintons, but it has to be acknowledged that Trump was in just as deep with Epstein as the Clintons, because it just came out last week that Epstein was officially a club member of Mar-a-Lago when Trump had denied it, but it's been confirmed in a book that's just come out. So I think there's going to be a lot more stuff that's going to come out with the Epstein deal. And it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out after the election.
And did you hear Robbie, Maria Farmer, who lived on Les Wexner's property there in Ohio? She remembers being in New York City with Ghislaine Maxwell, and Ghislaine was actually very good friends with Ivana Trump, Donald's first wife, and said that they would go out and procure young girls together in a limousine.
I heard that from Whitney Webb.
Yeah. So that's an interesting nugget.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things Tim Dillon has said about QAnon that I think is really a really good point is, like, if Trump was really waging this war against some kind of elite global pedophile network, the deep state or whatever you think it's connected to, he would not be able to stop talking about it. I mean, so like, all he knows to do, I mean, like, even when he talks about the deep state, you could tell he's just has this really vague sort of concept of it. And it's almost like, it sounds like to me that he's just sort of going by what other people say about it that he reads, like about the deep state. I don't even think, I mean, I would be curious to see what he actually like said about it at length, but I get the impression that sometimes he's just not even paying attention to some of these conspiracies. He just lets other people do sort of the heavy lifting for him, like Stone and all these other people.
He goes off the cuff a lot. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see him have Peter Dale Scott come and visit the White House and teach him a thing or two about the deep state. You know, I'm pretty sure he's been using that phrase since the 70s or 80s.
Yeah. Yeah, Peter Dale Scott, I would love to hear what he has to say about it. I mean, I know that he obviously doesn't fully embrace the Trump's use of it, but I mean, it's been completely weaponized as a partisan thing now. It's just Democratic establishment. It's like, and it's still super weird because, like, I don't know if you read this article today from The Intercept, but it says that he now just takes questions from like Epoch Times people, OAN news people, and Gateway pundit people at his press conferences.
Yeah,
and they're just plants, basically. Like, Epoch Times bought the more of Trump ads on Facebook than even his own campaign did. It's super weird, but you know,
isn't there money from China ultimately? Aren't they owned by a Chinese company?
No, they're partially subsidized by our tax dollars because the State Department and CIA fund Falun Gong. So Falun Gong,
yeah.
Sun Yen show. I don't know if you guys see those billboards where you live, but out here in the Bay Area, there's like a Sun Yen show performance, like billboard advertising campaign, like every 6 months. It's like blasted all over the place, and that's also Falun Gong. It's like a dance show thing that they.
Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't even know what Falun Gong was, and actually, Adam Green from No More News did a whole great video about them and Epoch Times. Is that how you pronounce it?
Epoch, right?
Yeah.
OCH. So I think it's Epic. I don't know.
Yeah, and how basically they're just an arm of China propaganda, just pro-Trump propaganda.
Well, it's even more pro-Trump than Fox News, which is strange because Trump is not even pleased with Fox News anymore. These outlets are like completely loyal, without any exception.
Like Turning Point.
And they're connected to like these neocon think tanks now. Like Gateway Pundit, for example, just quoted in his recent article praising this UAE Israel deal. He quoted a made up fictional MEK guy. He quoted this guy that's like basically just used in arguments about pro-Iranian regime change arguments. He's a made up MEK personality, which is a cult. If your listeners aren't aware of what MEK is, it's a cult.
John Bolton sock puppet.
Yeah, they work with Israel. They work with the U.S. to meddle in Iranians' government all the time.
Right. Yeah, and Bolton was didn't he speak before their group? And he's like he's a big proponent of those guys.
So is Giuliani. So is Pompeo. So is Gingrich. Yeah.
God, it's always all the same goofballs, man. They just never go away, man. They stick like barnacles, and they keep rearing their head, and it's just amazing seeing Rudy Giuliani, his last act being a strip mall lawyer for Donald Trump. It's unbelievable. My buddy dug up some great footage of me introducing Rudy Giuliani in 2006 here in New Hampshire at a First in the Nation Protect Our Primaries Summit that we were a part of. And I'm up there with a microphone shaking Rudy's hand for like 18 seconds, and it's just so ridiculous. So I posted that on my Instagram, and I wrote the origins of QAnon.
Nice. Have you seen that? Do you guys ever interview Anthony Schaefer or like hang out with him?
I've talked to him, privately in Facebook over the years, but we've never had him on. But I know he's become
he is loyal to the king.
Yeah.
Not just loyal to the king. Well, what's interesting is he was the first confirmation that I got. He was actually what convinced me that QAnon might actually be part of some kind of Trump team thing, that it's close to Trump's circle, because this guy who runs Black Tower Radio, Jake Fox, him and Anthony Schaefer would email back and forth sometimes, and Jake was already convinced that QAnon was close to the Trump administration, and I wasn't. So he's like, why don't we ask Anthony Schaefer? He's former military intelligence. What does he think about QAnon? Because QAnon's claiming it's military intelligence.
Right.
Anthony Schaefer's answer was basically, he thinks it's doing more good than harm. He thinks it's legit, and he encourages it. And I was just like blown away by that answer, because it was the first like actual government official to go on record commenting on it. And I was like, that's kind of scary, and makes me think that this isn't just a full-on LARP, even though definitely parts of it are a LARP.
Right.
might actually be really connected somehow to military intelligence or Trump's actual people somehow.
Well, I mean, Mike Flynn is all over it. His son's all over it. The people in the Flynn, so he gives that, I guess if you want to call what he has, credibility in the same way Schaefer does, is having come from that world. Redoing his little oath there on the 4th of July and retweeting all the Q stuff. It's unbelievable, man. It really is unbelievable. So it's just a big bucket of mush. It's hard to sift through and know what to think about a lot of it, but it has captured a lot of people's imagination, and they got 78 days until the election. So I mean, what do you think is going to happen with this election? I mean, I'm telling people that don't ever. I mean, the polls are polls, but Trump still has a lot of support, man, and there's a lot of people who support Trump, and they never publicly talk about it, and they quietly vote for him. So, what do you think is going to happen?
I think Trump's probably going to win. He's going to win. Even if his polls are looking bad now, his campaign played things so dirty last time. I think people are still trying to examine exactly what happened. I mean, that's even some of this mainstream media coverage of QAnon, to me, is almost just like, it's like forensic investigations on exactly how this all happened in the first place, like going back into Pizzagate, going back into the WikiLeaks dumps. So I think he's got something up his sleeve. His campaign probably does. Even Q probably does. So
yeah,
I think it's not looking good for the Democrats. And who knows? Maybe the Democrats don't even want to win this time. I mean, the campaign is awful. Like, who is even advising Biden? It doesn't even make sense.
Chris Dodd.
All right, yeah. I mean, I'm with you on that, Robbie. It doesn't even seem like the Democrats even want to win this thing, man. I mean, the ticket of Biden and Harris is just so pedestrian and not giving anything to progressives, people who were Bernie people who were supporters of Yang, Marianne Williamson, Tulsi people. Like, they're not giving us anything, seemingly. So a lot of people are going to either stay home, or I know a lot of people who just kind of as a middle finger are going to vote for Trump.
Well, I think that it's been very apparent for many years that the Democratic Party wants to totally freeze out actual left, like progressive people. I mean, it's completely the opposite of the Republican Party, which has allowed everything from Obama's gay, Michelle's a man, to QAnon conspiracies into their actual party. I mean, this Marjorie Taylor Greene candidate just won the runoff election. She's an open QAnon supporter. She's actually probably going to win a Republican House seat. It's wild.
It's incredible.
But I keep going back to Q. Sorry, I'm trying to. You see, we're talking about the election.
It's related. I mean,
it's great. I think Harris, though, one strategic thing that I think also Tim Dillon pointed out, and I agree with him on this, is that Harris seems to be one of the people that Biden could choose that the Republicans can't necessarily add any additional ammunition to go after Biden with. It's like there's not really anything about her that's easy to go after for the Republicans. It's more that the left hates Kamala Harris. And for all the reasons the left hates her, it won't matter to the Republicans, essentially. That she's a former prosecutor, that she put a bunch of black people in jail, that kind of thing doesn't matter to Republicans. They want more of that. So so I think in that regard, it's strategically smart. But I mean, yeah, I just do not see Biden getting anything over on Trump. It just doesn't make sense to me. I think if there's a debate between the two, which I don't even see happening at this point, I just can't see Biden coming out ahead at all. I think he's going to get absolutely destroyed on the debate stage.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it happens just for the entertainment, and so I can mine it for material, and it's just, seeing the two of them up there. I mean, that's when Trump's his best, man. He's in beast gladiator mode when he's just up there shooting from the hip. We got Joe Biden up here. He's basically a corpse. Okay, he's corpse bride Biden. They got to wheel him in here, and Kamala just gave him some steroids up his ass, and now he's going to give a performance, and it's going to be a disaster, quite frankly, for the Democrats. We know when Trump showed up to those debates with Hillary, those were some of the most entertaining and epic and over-the-top ridiculous things to ever happen in American electoral politics. And Trump wasn't prepared at all, man. He was just blowing hot gas, but he had some great moments, man, and some one-liners and some knockouts of Hillary that just the best one, is just it's just so good. Someone like Donald Trump's not in charge of law enforcement in our country. And Trump's like, yeah, because you'd be in jail.
That was great. And that's so fun too, to think that
it is, Robbie.
He dragged out that carrot on a stick and Hillary was going to go to jail. I mean, can you imagine if Obama during the 2008 election said he was going to put like the Bush administration in jail? Like, how excited to hear that?
Be incredible.
He did kind of float. That's what I think, that Trump, in some ways, people don't see him being at all like Obama, but I actually do think there's some odd similarities between the two of them. I think that the North Korea diplomacy thing, the way that Trump wanted the PR to just all go in his favor for that without the actual like hard work, legwork going into it, reminded me a lot of Obama and like the Cuba stuff and even the Iranian deal, like the fact that could just fall apart when Trump gets in office and the next president could reverse that. It just sort of shows that Obama and Trump wanted this sort of legacy set up for themselves as these peacemaker, deal maker people without actually putting in the legwork and like the experience points necessary.
He put out a tweet, invited Rocket Man to the DMZ, and showed up. It was incredible. There's a great meme of Trump kind of looking. He does that look where he looks like the Grinch. He's like, and he's looking at Rocket Man, and like Rocket Man's like explaining something, and it says me ordering McDonald's for the first time, and then under Trump it says my father.
No, 7-year-old me ordering McDonald's for the first time.
Yeah, and Trump's the proud doting father watching his little son order a Big Mac.
It's incredible.
Look, the Iran nuclear deal, Robbie. They gave him $150 billion for nothing, and $1.1 billion of it was cash. It was in cash. I love when he says cash.
Pallets of a whole entire warehouse full of cash. That ends, and it ends now. Believe me.
Oh,
I love it. Yeah, it's so interesting to think how all of that, whatever progress that was, it's just been all destroyed. That was probably literally the only good thing Obama put in place as president.
Yeah, that, and when he
Cuba
pardoned Chelsea Manning. Yeah, it was great to see things with Cuba at least opening up.
The only thing stopping war with Iran right now, I think, is China. It's like our focus and this intense, pivot towards China that his administration is doing. Otherwise, I'd be really concerned that would have been a war by now, honestly.
Yeah, so you don't buy that crap that Tucker Carlson and Rand Paul got in Trump's ear about not attacking Iran. I mean, you've done great stuff about Tucker Carlson's father is like a CIA guy, right?
Yeah, but maybe it's true that they got in his ear. If that's true, then that's still really weird that we were one Tucker Carlson and Rand Paul conversation away from World War III.
And you got Lindsey Graham knocking on the door. Come on, Donald. I know you want to go there and destroy some more brown people. It just makes my nipples so hard.
It's so either way, if it's true or not, it still disturbs me. And if I was Trump, I wouldn't want to have on my legacy to start a whole new war with ground troops. I think at this point it is politically kind of untenable to launch a new war with ground troops. It's going to get a lot of pushback. So yeah. Trump just happens to be in there at that time where running on anti the Iraq war was very trendy. He took advantage of that. And I think that was very smart for him to do as well. That's why I don't think that he is really like genuinely anti-war. It's more like he's just very savvy, about what to say. And he knows people don't like war. Who likes war? Nobody does.
John Bolton, the neocons.
Yeah. Republicans for Biden, they like war.
Robert Kagan.
Yeah.
But no, you're right, Robbie. No one likes war, and Trump is he's brilliant with the messaging, man. I've watched recently a lot of his old interviews on Howard Stern, and he was on there leading up to Iraq. And look, I've come out very tough against the war. I think it's stupid. The Bush tax cuts are great for business people like me. They'll be great for working Americans. But I think Iraq is stupid. They're not thinking it through, Howard. And You can mine that quote, and the Trump people have used it to show he was the great dove when crooked Hillary was, cooking up the Iraq War with Biden and company.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you probably even remember when 9/11 truthers tried to cherry pick things that he said about 9/11 and to make it as a secret truther.
Yeah, he was like, the World Trade Center came down during your brother's reign, Jeb. That's not safe. And then he was up there. He's like, we're going to find out, Robbie, that Saudi Arabia was involved a lot more in 9/11 than people even realize, okay? That's going to come out. And then he gets in the office, and this goofball does the biggest arms deal with Saudi Arabia ever.
Yeah. And that whole Saudi embassy murder thing is really bizarre. I mean, that whole thing is a very fascinating part of his administration. And I still don't honestly know what to make of that situation.
Well, I know MBS, a.k.a. we call him MBS, Robbie, but I call him Mohammed Bonesaw. Okay, he's a tough guy. He's a tough guy. I know MBS and little soy boy Jared Kushner are really good friends.
Yeah, allegedly they are, yeah.
They text each other, and they fucking ran cover for MBS to do that. They don't give a shit, But look, I believe him. I think that maybe he walked into the embassy and there was an errant bone saw in the hallway and he tripped on a banana peel. That's what MBS told me, Robbie. I believe him. Okay, next question.
Wasn't Khashoggi? Wasn't his uncle Adnan Khashoggi the infamous arms dealer?
Yeah. So that's weird. That's what's part of what's weird about it is he was also then his son became a journalist, for the Washington Post, while also like himself working for intelligence at different points too. It's a strange rabbit hole.
Yeah, well, that relationship, as you know, man, is a clusterfuck. Navigating Saudi Arabia and giving him the wink for genocide in Yemen and selling him billions in weapons and it all but being proven that the people within the royal family are connected to Bandar Bush, funded some of the hijackers. I mean, I'm still friendly with a lot of 9/11 families, and we actually had one of them, a guy named Tim Froelich, came up to New Hampshire when I was up here campaigning for Tulsi, and he spoke the day that we got her on the ballot in New Hampshire, and he spoke about his fight in the lawsuit and trying to get anything out about Saudi Arabia. And this guy's done his homework, and he's a survivor. He was in the I think he was in the South Tower, and he survived the South Tower, and he met with Trump. He met with Trump at the White House on the anniversary. And Trump claimed he was going to help the families. He told Tim personally, like, we're going to help you guys. And they didn't do shit, turned his back on him. And nothing's been done about that. It's just a lot of lip service, And then obviously the anniversary comes around every year. Everyone says never forget. And they, we remember everyone and mourn the dead. And then, September 12th, we don't think about it or care about it anymore for another year. Obviously, people like us, we do, because we've been looking into it for so long and are just so incensed by all the fallout from 9/11 and the justification that's been used and the mileage they've gotten out of that day. That's just led to death and destruction and mayhem in the Middle East and other parts of the world. So, yeah, and it's the same thing with the Kennedy files. I mean, look, at long last, we're going to get out the Kennedy files and release them. And then he got someone from Langley, paid him a visit. I don't know who it was. It was Pompeo or somebody, and the files got put on ice.
Yeah. No, it's really unfortunate because I think, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I think that what QAnon and Pizzagate have done is we have gone into this era where there are a lot of people who can find things on the internet now, who are really good at like searching, sleuths who can track down documents, and all the energy is being devoted to these things that are probably largely untrue. These narratives where we know that there's all these aspects of just 9/11 itself that haven't been fully explored. People haven't turned over every stone. I mean, like I was just talking to somebody the other day about just the elevator shafts themselves. It's like, who were all the companies that worked on those? Like, who are the people's names? Like, all these things should be like fully mapped out by now, but all the energy in the conspiracy movement is being devoted to just these wild, deep state pedophile conspiracies and not events that we know for sure where thousands of people died, like 9/11 or the JFK assassination where a president was murdered. I mean, that's so I used to have more hope that the bigger the internet got, the more energy they'd be devoted to things like this. But I don't know, man. It does feel like people are really being led astray into some, let's just say, wasteful areas. And I don't want to sound like that old Noam Chomsky quote where he says 9/11 truth is taking vast energies away from the left. But I kind of do agree that QAnon is taking vast energies away from the conspiracy and movement and the skeptical minded populace in general. So
That's a great point, Robbie. I do agree with that. There was an FBI dumped on Twitter like within the last month a bunch of stuff about the Finders cult from the 80s, which was a whole ring that was trafficking children. They just quietly released a bunch of documents and information about that, and that just flew right under the radar because mainstream media, whether it's like the Atlantic and they've done some good work on the QAnon deal, or other publications. That's all they're talking about. Daily Beast, Rolling Stone, Atlantic, all of them, CNN, you name it. They're just focusing on the really broader and kind of crazier sounding aspects of Q, and that takes away from real information that's actually coming out, whether it's about Epstein or a lot of it's distracting at Epstein. And fortunately, it is still a big story because of Maxwell's arrest, but I think it's sucking a lot of the oxygen away from that, like especially like that Mayfair bullshit that came out some weeks back about the desks or bureaus, whatever the hell it was, closets that they said they had kids in them, and it's ridiculous, And then that Snopes puts it up, and that becomes the whole story, and it just discredits all the good information, and it's too bad because you got to sift through so much shit. People don't even know what's real or what to believe.
Yeah, and I think that whole thing sprung out of the fact that Ghislaine Maxwell knew or was connected to the company, people in that company, Wayfair. So that's how but by the time that it turned into that Wayfair conspiracy, just a snowball that totally makes people not look at the actual details of the Maxwell case. As we know, it connects to Trump. I mean, that's what's so fascinating is a lot of this stuff does connect to Trump. The Epstein Maxwell thing connects to the Clintons and the Trump family and a whole bunch of other people. It seems bipartisan, although there is sort of a Hollywood, aspect to it too. But
oh yeah, through Harvey Weinstein and several people who were in the Black Book. I don't know. I guess this might be my own theory, but I think probably the Trumps and the Clintons all have dirt on each other, and that's why none of them are going to go down, because if one of them goes down, they all are. So
I think
when you get
possible, yeah, for sure.
When you get to that level, man, to be in that club, like George Carlin calls it, the big club, you got to really have some shit on your shoes. So it's unsavory stuff. And then we got the virus going on, which I'm glad we didn't really spend a lot of time talking on, because that's been, So I don't know. 2020. It's someone posted a meme. It's basically just a dumpster fire scented candle, and it was a little dumpster that had a fire, and it was a candle. That's 2020 in a nutshell so far. And I think with the election coming up in the next few months, man, it's going to get crazier and wilder, and we're going to be taking on turns that you can't even fathom, especially come October. So we appreciate you coming on, Robbie. Where can people find your work?
Well, they can check out the podcast that I do about 4 times a month called Media Roots Radio. Usually I do it with my sister, Abby Martin, but she's on break right now. So I'm doing it by myself for a little bit. And you could get that on any podcast platform like iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher. And I also have a 3-part documentary series that I did about the neoconservatives that's available streaming online. You can get that at averyheavyagenda.com.
Excellent. And congratulations to you on being an uncle, and to Abby and Mike for the birth of their child. That's great.
It's awesome. It feels crazy to be an uncle. I have a nephew now.
That's wild.
Uncle Robbie. He's everybody's favorite uncle. Yeah, I actually just speaking of uncles, I just picked up Mary Trump's book about her uncle.
Oh, yeah.
The psychologist there who wrote the book about the king. And I'm looking forward to reading that, man, because obviously there's an agenda, but someone writes a book about their uncle, there's going to be some shit in there, some juicy tidbits, and it's going to be very interesting. So, yeah, well, we appreciate you coming on. And I wanted to, I mean, I guess while we're leaving, I wanted to ask you about Beirut. I mean, what are your thoughts on that quickly? Like, I mean, do you think that was this an accident, or what the hell was that?
I don't know, man. I honestly haven't made up my mind on it yet. Like, I've just sort of, my whole approach to this stuff over the years has been to not rush to judgment. It definitely could be some kind of deliberate attack made to look like an accident. I mean, that's possible still. But I think it's too early for me to tell. I remember I was at a 9/11 Truth Film Festival a couple years back, and somebody was selling a book all about how the Orlando nightclub shooting was a false flag attack, like 2 or 3 months after it happened. And I remember after seeing that, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to ever be caught in a situation where I am saying something is fake or a false flag unless I have evidence where I'm like, okay, feel really comfortable. So yeah, I don't know. The verdict is still out for me on that one.
Yeah, well, that's called being responsible, man. And that's one of the things about Twitter that it just makes it so toxic is people just pile it on right away, man. And they're experts and they know everything without knowing anything, you know? So
well, it's clickbait. I mean, sometimes it's, you know, you get the most clicks and views if you're the first one to come out and say something's a conspiracy too. So
right. Mike, have you done your Fetzer impression for Robbie?
I don't think that I have. Well, Robbie, yes. Eric, yes.
What are you up to now these days, Fetzer? Dr. Fetzer?
Well, if you go to veteranstoday.org/.com, we've done some fantastic work on the Paul is dead theory, which is amazing, and I implore you to look at it. I haven't done Fetzer in a while, dude. That was a curveball, man.
That's great.
Well, it's very clearly obvious there was some kind of hologram at the Pentagon. I mean, the Pentagon, a lot of people say, didn't even exist that day on the 11th of September, 2001.
We'll have to do another episode, maybe a 9/11 themed one, as you get closer to the anniversary.
You just play all different characters. You two.
Yeah, we could do an impression jamboree. We could bring in Governor Jesse Ventura, Robbie, to talk about the two parties being gangs, Crips and Republicans. I was a citizen governor. I did one term, and then I said, I'm going back to my horse farm. I'll do one term. It's the People's Mansion. I turned the governor's mansion into a wrestling ring and had Vince McMahon in there and Macho Man Randy Savage. But I went back to my horse farm, Robbie, because I'm a citizen legislator and a governor.
Okay.
Cool,
all right,
man.
guys.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining us, Robbie. And
thanks for having me.
Everyone check out Robbie Martin's stuff. He's done amazing work, and we appreciate you watching. And you can subscribe to our channel here on Jackman Radio. And if you want to help us out on Patreon, we're at patreon.com/Jackman Radio on all your favorite social media platforms. So give us a like, give us a subscribe, and say hi. So take care, everybody.
Cheers.